Part 274. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2736. Xiaoguan did not stop the chef from recommending his family, and no one knew how long the envoy would stay here, and there would definitely be more people in the kitchen. Tim, who is not Tim? The family is well managed. So he asked the chef to bring back his wife and children, and he hurried to report the situation to the second high school prince. However, the second high school prince had not finished the meeting. He stood outside for a while and saw Nisa come out of the room with a tired and sad face. When he saw this expression, he didn't dare to go up, for fear of bad luck. So he lowered his head and hid aside. Nisa left disappointed and sad, and the little official raised his head and glanced at his hunched back. Seeing that the other generals had also come out, he hurriedly went to see him. The second prince of the high school was about to speak to his confidant. When he heard him begging for advice, he called someone in, and asked, "Have the envoys of the Jin state been arranged?" Yes. Xiaoguan carefully described Bai Shan's various performances after moving in, including the long paragraph that Daji said. Then he took out the ingot and offered it to him, bending over and saying, "Prince, this is what he gave to his servants." The second high school prince only glanced at it and waved his hand. "Since he gave it to you, you can keep it." He sneered, "Send someone to guard his yard and don't allow them to go out at will." He decided to let him hang for 2 days to see the situation, and to confirm the attitude of Dajin. The little official responded, and seeing that the second high school prince did not express any other views on the matter of finding a cook in the guest house, he bowed and left. As soon as the little official left, his confidant bowed and said, "Prince, listen to the sound, this envoy should be from a wealthy background." The second high school prince sneered, "You can achieve the position of Zhongshishiren at a young age, and you can also serve as an ambassador for the emperor. How can your background be low? The height of birth also means that the opponent's knowledge and ability are not weak." Since he can face him neither humble nor arrogant, the second high school prince knows that although this opponent is young, he should not be underestimated. But just after a word, Yuan Yi and the others have already made the calculation of surrender. The second high school prince pursed his lips unhappily when he thought of this, and ordered again, "Send someone to guard the yard where they live, and don't allow them to go out." Yes. Bai Shan stood on the steps with his hands behind his back, watching the soldiers walking around outside the courtyard wall, smiled slightly, and turned to enter. Shuigui walked around the whole yard and even turned over the toilets at the back. He and Bai Shan said, "Master Bai, there are people guarding the front, back, left, and right, every 10 steps, and we can't go out even at night. If we can't go out, then we won't go out. Being trapped here, can't we do nothing? What good do you bring so much gold and silver jewelry?" Bai Shan smiled slightly and said, "I can't be on the mountain, so naturally I have to let the mountain come to me." He turned his head and asked Daji, "Is the cook's family here?" "Coming." "How many people are there in their family?" Daji said, "His wife, 2 sons, and a daughter. When I heard that I wanted a girl who would boil water, he brought them all." He said, "He told me that his wife and eldest son can buy ingredients. They are familiar with the vegetable farmers in the city, and the younger son can stay in the courtyard and give instructions." Bai Shan nodded slightly. "I've asked, are all his family here?" "Yes, I brought it all." Bai Shan was satisfied, and said to Daji, "Give them some gold, which means that I will use fresh vegetables for lunch and dinner, as well as roast mutton. I want the tenderest piece, and I don't want any excess." Dagil understood and turned around to get the gold. Shuigui, who was on the side, saw that Daji took another piece of gold and went out, and was speechless for a while. Even the emperor on the opposite side is not so extravagant. Last time, they ate the same meal with His Majesty. The emperor and them ate the same thing, only 2 dishes and 1 soup. One dish was tofu, and one only added some minced meat. The army is outside, and this is not his own territory. The supplies can't keep up, the food is not paid, and the vegetables and meat are really scarce. He vaguely felt that Bai Shan's move was not purely for food, but he couldn't understand why, so he could only keep silent and plan to see the situation. The chef was also very excited and surprised when he received a piece of gold. Although he was already prepared for this nobleman's extravagance, he was still surprised by the cost of food for 2 days. Daji said, "Money is not a problem, the main thing is to make my young master have a good time. If you do well, the young master still has rewards." The chef bowed with his family and said, "Yes, yes, the little ones must do their best." After Daji left, the chef lady stared at the gold in his hand in a daze, swallowed and said, "Master, where can I find so many fresh vegetables at this time?" She said, "I was just going to find someone to buy some cabbage from the cellar." The chef said, "Those vegetable farmers don't have them. You can buy them from those big families. They have villages and other courtyards. There must be places to grow fresh vegetables. As long as you have money, can you buy these things?" He touched the gold in his hand and said, "See, it's real gold, such a piece can buy a small yard, even if you can only save a small part of it, if you save it a few more times, it will be worth my money in the restaurant. 20 years as a cook." The chef lady heard the same thing, swallowed, saliva, and reached out to take the gold. "Okay, I'll go out to find it now. I used to know a lot of other people's stewardess when I delivered food to the restaurant. I'll ask them." The chef nodded in satisfaction. Soldiers at the door of the kitchen did not stop people from going in and out of shopping, but they just did not allow people from Jin to come and go. Bai Shan didn't try to test their bottom line, and just stayed in the room very honestly, but from time to time he stabbed the place where he lived. After a while, he said that the quilt was not soft enough, so he had someone go and tell the soldiers at the door to get a new quilt. After a while, I said it was really boring. I asked them to send some books, and I asked for pen, ink, paper, inkstone, etc. Anyway, there were so many requests for details that the soldiers guarding the door stiffened when they saw the Jin people coming. On the other hand, they still have the attitude of going to the country, and the Koguryo side lost the battle. If you want to be tough, you can't be tough, so you can only bear it. And every time the council will meet their requirements, the soldiers guarding the gate are even less confident against them, and obviously they know that although they are guarding the envoys of the Jin state, even their Shangguan must be polite to these Jin people. So although they were not allowed to go out, they were polite to them. Shuigui also saw that the door was coming, and turned his head to look at Bai Shan, who was flipping through the book. It was an ordinary book of the Analects of Confucius. He had no choice but to suppress his temper and sit aside in a daze. The next day, the kitchen really made the fresh vegetables and tender roast lamb that Bai Shan requested. Bai Shan raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and continued to ask for careful food the next day. After the chef also arranged for him the next day, Bai Shan asked the chef to talk to him and asked him directly, "I think you speak Chinese well, did you study in a middle school in a restaurant?" The chef was stunned for a moment, then bent down and said, "Yes, this is not only Yayan, but also our Mandarin. I was working in a restaurant and occasionally had to meet some distinguished guests, so I learned it." Bai Shan was very satisfied, nodded, and said, "I think your cooking skills are good, especially the dim sum. Do you want to go to the Central Plains?" He smiled slightly and said, "If you want, I can take you with me when I go back to Chang'an. How about you be a cook for me? See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2737. The chef's eyes lit up, and there was a moment of surprise, and then he hesitated again, hesitatingly said, "Is the noble person going to sign a contract with Xiao?" "The contract is of course to be signed." You can sign the living contract. If you don't want to work in my house, there is also a restaurant in my house. You can go in and try it. I think your little white cake is delicious. The chef was nervous, both wanting to go and terrified. As for Chang'an, it is said that the place is full of gold and pearls. The adults in it all wear silk and satin, and they all eat white rice and white noodles. Just looking at this noble person's demeanor is extraordinary. If you can follow him. The chef asked cautiously, the little family. Bai Shan smiled slightly and said, I'm not a villain, so of course I won't let your flesh and blood be separated. You can bring your family with you. He pointed to Daji and said, if you are interested, you can talk to Daji if you have any doubts. I think your skills are good, and you are a little inferior in staying here. If you go to Chang'an, you may be able to show your strengths, and you may not be successful. Chang'an, the capital of Dajin, is a place that many people yearn for. Even if the chef is far away in Goguryeo, he yearns for it. But leaving his hometown and leaving a familiar place still made him a little terrified, mainly because he didn't know much about the treatment of this noble person at the moment. So he knelt down and kowtowed, I want to think about it, little one. Bai Shan nodded, yes, you can think about it slowly. After the chef went out, he went to Daji to inquire. He asked Daji curiously, is your lord a servant of a noble family? The servant of the world is actually a kind of honor among the servants, and can use the power of the master. Daji said, it used to be, but I am a good candidate now, but I am still beside the young master as a personal follower. The chef's eyes lit up when he heard it, that must be the adult's outstanding ability, and he has made great contributions to the master's family. Is this the credit? Daji just smiled and didn't want to say more, but after thinking about it, he still said, it's okay, but the two sons in the family are also promising, and one is about to study for the imperial examination, so the old lady Grace gave me a book. To be able to study the imperial examinations, the chef covered his heart, this is a major event to change the family. The chef lowered his voice and asked, is your family prosperous? Our young master is from the Bai clan in Longzhou. The chef didn't understand, but it seemed to be very powerful. He hesitated for a moment, but still asked, I don't know how the wages of the servants in the family are calculated. This is very familiar. The treatment in the kitchen has always been relatively good. The person in charge of the kitchen directly receives the same salary as the maid, a monthly stipend, and clothes throughout the year. You don't have to worry about food and lodging. Not bad anyway. The chef asked in a low voice, I don't know how much rice can I buy in Chang'an with a drop of money. For this year, let's go up and down 80 buckets of money. The chef asked, shaking his lips, buy, white rice. Daji nodded, white rice. The chef became more and more excited. Daji continued, there are restaurants and tea shops at home. If you don't want to stay in the mansion, you can also go to these places to be the chef. Daji paused and said, their wages are not low. Daji is an honest person and can't say anything particularly nice, but the chef and other guards have also inquired about Chang'an, and I heard that the city of Ungshi is similar to a small town on the edge of the capital, where a county is prosperous. Incomparable, tourists are like weaving. Buildings are generally not lower than 3 floors, the roads are wide, people from any country are there, pearls and gems are all over the street. Shuigui walked past them expressionlessly. He didn't quite understand Bai Shan's meaning. What's the use of taking so much trouble to subdue a cook? It can't really be a little white cake to bring people back to the capital, right? Then Bai Shan smiled when the chef brought his family to show his loyalty and expressed his willingness to follow Bai Shan back to Chang'an, and immediately established a 10-year contract with them. He said, 10 years later, if you still want to stay in my house, then continue to stay. If you don't want to, I will settle down in Chang'an for you, as a good record. The chef was greatly moved and kowtowed again and again. Then Bai Shan gave him a bag of golden beans and said with a smile, I suppressed this beforehand, and now the two countries are at war, and it is not easy to publicize, so you know what I know, and you can take these golden beans and buy more tomorrow. Good food, I want to invite General Yuanyi and a few adults to eat. Yes, the chef bowed to take it. After a pause, Bai Shan smiled and said, it's not good for the generals to have a meal without wine, and the drink is not good either. I don't know which one in the city has a good wine collection. After thinking about it, the chef said, some wealthy businessmen and big families have fine wines in their possession, but it's just that these wines are not easy to buy. Unfortunately, the restaurants are closed now. I also know that fine wine is rare, but after all, this is my first time to entertain guests, and I always have to do my best, Bai Shan said with a smile. In my opinion, fine wine is rare, but as long as you have enough chips, someone will always sell it. Then some soldiers and guards came up with a few pieces of cloth. These are all good things they looted when they broke Liaodong City and Bian City and other cities, and Bai Shan brought them here specially. He said to the head chef, whose eyes were straight, this is the silk and satin I brought from Chang'an. Maybe some people like it? You can try to exchange it? If you can exchange it for 2 or 3 jars of good wine. The chef nodded again and again, and went out with his things in his arms. He wouldn't dare to ignore such a good thing. So in less than 2 hours, the big families and wealthy businessmen in half of Ungshi city knew that the envoys of Jin who came from the opposite side were not only generous, but also lived extravagantly. They wanted to eat fresh vegetables and good meat. Now also eat good wine. Just because he wanted to entertain General Yuanyi and a few people, he was willing to exchange 4 excellent silks and satins for fine wine. This is the argument of people with fairly well-informed information. Most of the ordinary people don't know who Bai Shan is at all, nor do they know that the envoy is coming from the opposite side. They are just worried, and they don't know when this battle will be fought. But some people think a lot, they have access to the highest secrets, and they can also know the thoughts of some people. In a large house in the south of the city, a young man walked into the house quickly, and behind him he brought a servant holding a piece of cloth, and told his father the news he had just received, the son will give the other party a jar of wine at his own discretion. The middle-aged man got up to look at the silk and satin, touched it, and said, it is indeed the finest silk and satin. I heard that it was brought from the capital. The middle-aged man sneered, he came to march to fight, not to do business. What do you bring such fine silk and satin for? I guess it's the spoils of war confiscated from other cities. Son is ashamed. The middle-aged man said indifferently, what is there to be ashamed of? It's not fake. But this envoy is indeed smart and arrogant. Since the first day Bai Shan came here, many people have been staring at him and the council. They also want to know if they can negotiate peacefully, or surrender. Therefore, they all know Bai Shan's recipes that have not been repeated in the past few days. Whether he is a pampered aristocrat or not, he is arrogant anyway. And the second prince actually tolerated his arrogance, which is very intriguing. The middle-aged man said, go and take out another jar of good wine, we will go out for a walk tomorrow. Yes. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2738. There are many people who have the same plans as middle-aged men. At this time, the invitations written by Bai Shan were also delivered to the generals and ministers by the soldiers guarding the door. They invariably took the post to find the second prince of high school. The second high school prince sneered, but after only 3 days, he really couldn't bear it any longer. And he also wanted to see what the other party wanted to do, mainly because Zhao Qiuagong was too annoying. Although the offensive was a little slow in the past 3 days, he was still attacking them, and the East 3rd Street had already been robbed. Although the second prince of high school has been sitting firmly, he is actually a little impatient, but he does not want to surrender, he still wants to fight for peace. Go ahead, said the second-year high school prince, I also want to see what he wants to do. The generals who received the post looked at each other and saluted, yes. By the time Nisa received the news, they had already left to prepare. He objected and said to the second prince of high school, Second prince, even if you see him, you should see him. He is an envoy of the Jin state. Let these generals go to see the envoys of the Jin state, aren't they afraid that he will persuade them to surrender? The second prince should stop them from contacting each other. The second high school prince wanted to use them to test Bai Shan, mainly because Bai Shan was too strong and sharp-tongued when he first met him. He wanted to prepare to see each other completely. Nisa was so angry that he could no longer be cautious, and said bluntly, Prince, the identities of you and the envoy are equal, whether they go to a banquet or a private banquet, what status are they in, and what are they talking about? Yuanyi and the others became unhappy when they heard the words, and asked back, what do you mean, my lord, do you suspect that I will be linked to the enemy country? We came to report to the prince as soon as we got the post. The second high school prince said quickly, of course I believe in the generals, and the generals don't have to worry about it. Nisa felt a little pain in her heart. Looking at the monarchs and ministers who confessed to each other, she opened her mouth and couldn't say anything. He covered his heart and waited until they had had enough chatting, then slowly bowed and saluted, Prince, this servant is not feeling well, so I will retire first. The second high school prince was displeased in his heart, but his face remained calm, and nodded, okay, Nisa has a good rest. Lusa turned and left in disappointment. He got into the carriage, closed his eyes, and followed his confidant, let the family prepare quietly, and send them away tomorrow night. He was taken aback for a moment and asked, where are you going? Nuasa said, go back to your hometown and quietly send them back. The follower was taken aback and asked, Master, can't an Shishan hold back? Didn't you say you want peace talks? You won't be able to negotiate, Nisa said with indifferent eyes, the prince and them are not confident enough, and their hearts are empty. Just one face-to-face, the envoy of Jin has already taken control of the situation, and the peace negotiation will not happen. He has been silent these past few days, because the second prince was right to put Bai Shan under house arrest. As long as their attitudes are ambiguous, they hesitate between peace talks and surrender, and the war on the front line is delayed. Even if the front line has been fighting continuously, it is much more relaxed than a few days ago, and they can drag it on for at least half a month. Nisa thought that after a period of time, ranging from 10 days to half a month, the weather would get cold. Once the weather became cold, the Jin army might retreat, and then they would have to withdraw from Ungshi city or accept peace talks. But he didn't expect that the second prince would let Yuanyi and others go to see the envoy. We talked about it that day, and Yuanyi already has the intention of surrendering. Sometimes it is the will to fight. The will of the two sides is a battle. One side is firm, while the other side is vacillating. Whoever loses and who wins, it becomes clear at a glance without having to fight. There was no hope for Ungshi Cheng, and even for the whole of Goguryeo. He whispered and followed in a low voice, let the family bring light things, and when you go back, close the door tightly and reduce communication with the outside world. Yes. The next morning, Bai Shan's guest house was busy, and the guards also picked up brooms to clean the courtyard. No way, they have few servants, only the chef's family, and their family is busy with the kitchen at this time. Bai Shan put on a set of clothes he found last night, a long robe with wide sleeves, moon white, embroidered with auspicious clouds and dark patterns on the robe, and then put on a jade crown. He did nothing, just stood in front of the door with a smile. That is a stunning painting. Such a romantic figure, let alone the Goguryeo people, is rarely seen even by Shwegui. Holding the wine, holding the time, the Meng family father and son, who came across Yuan Yi, stared blankly at the person standing on the steps. Bai Shanzheng watched people take down the lanterns hanging under the eaves and add lamp oil. The oil in the lanterns was used up last night and only burned until midnight. Sensing that someone was looking at him, Bai Shan turned his head to look over and saw Yuan Yi and the two people behind him who he didn't know. At this time, Bai Shan's status was higher than them, so Yuan Yi first clasped his fists and saluted, "Bai Envoy." Bai Shan smiled and returned the salute. "General Yuan is willing to come, it's really bright, please come in." Seeing that he was respectful and polite, Yuan Yi put down his heart slightly, and took the father and son of the Meng family inside, and waited until they entered the hall to introduce them. "Envoy Bai, this is Mr. Meng, and this is Mr. Meng." Mr. Meng hurriedly took Mr. Meng and saluted again, and Bai Shan smiled and saluted, but after Pyongyang first took Samong Yuan. With a start, Master Meng bowed excitedly and moved, and said, "It's the ancestor." Bai Shan smiled and said to him, "I've heard about Montessori a long time ago. Back then, when our ancestors resisted the attack of tens of thousands of people on Kyushu Island in Pyongyang, the prestige was resounding at home and abroad." Master Meng asked excitedly, "Has the envoy also heard of this story?" Naturally, according to the historical records of the DPRK and China, Bai once worked in the Hanlin Academy, so I saw it, and when I talked about it with my colleagues, I was fascinated. Master Meng was so excited that he almost lost his way and held Bai Shan's hand. Unfortunately, after the grandfather's glory, neither his father nor he could continue the grandfather's glory. Yuan Yi on the side. The Jin dynasty was full of talented people, and the most important thing was this kind of wise generals and fierce generals who defeated more with less. Some people could even lead hundreds of troops to traverse the western regions, and even conquer one or two countries. How could they look down on a small Mongolian Yuan? It's still Meng Yuan who has been dead for decades. But Yuan Yi didn't say anything. If he said this to offend people, he wasn't stupid. After Yuan Yi arrived, other guests also arrived one after another. Without exception, every general and minister brought another person with him. Yuan Yi met on the road, because the relationship was not bad, or they used to be soft on others, so the other party brought people with them. I also went to someone's door early in the morning, and we came together after we negotiated in advance. Bai Shan did not refuse anyone who came, and invited them to be seated warmly, and then let him take out all the good tea to brew. Shwegui stared in astonishment. Bai Shan nodded with satisfaction, "Very good, there are big families, as well as local officials in Ungshi City that he has never seen or seen before, and wealthy businessmen in Ungshi City. This is finally complete. I don't know if the high school prince knows that his post is 1 or 2, or even 3. I don't know if he will regret it when he finds out." Bai Shan raised the corner of his mouth and smiled. "See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2739. Bai Shan made no secret of his thoughts. When the guests arrived, he invited everyone to eat and drink while talking about his life in Chang'an and the emperor's preferential treatment of his subordinate ministers. Today, surrendering generals, ministers, and even nobles and grandchildren are treated preferentially. As long as you have the ability, even if you were the grandson of his king, you can use your ability to make a prince into a prime minister, or even lead troops to guard one side. These are precedents. As long as they don't revolt to the death, even if they make mistakes, the emperor will treat them more favorably than ordinary subjects. There is also precedent. Goguryeo is just a vassal state of the great Jin dynasty. It occupies only 2 or 3 states, and even one is much larger than it. So what future can you have here? Not to mention that your appointment as an official is entirely based on your family background and power. If the family owner does something in this matter, future generations will not have the opportunity to enter the power hierarchy again. Unlike the Great Jin dynasty, unless the crime is extremely heinous, it will not bring disaster to the descendants of the imperial examination. In addition to the imperial examinations, there are also police examinations, and you can even buy officials with money. There are various methods. As long as you have talent, money, or power, you can always find a way to get ahead. Does one of your vassals have these? And why do people want positions of power? Not for a life of prosperity and wealth. But how old is Goguryeo? It is also located in the bitter cold, and it is not comparable to the vastness and wealth of the entire Dajin. After the surrender, the sky is wide and the sea is vast, and you can walk around, which is much more convenient than the vassal subjects entering and leaving Dajin. Not to mention, the surrender generals and families are born with merit, and it will not be difficult to find an official position at that time. Although everyone knew that Bai Shan had bad intentions and said these words to persuade Jin to surrender, everyone couldn't help but listen. This is the reason why Nasa is reluctant to contact them. Everyone has selfish intentions, who said that persuading to surrender has to be done in secret. Bai Shan came upright. Wouldn't those who listen take it to their hearts? Naturally not, no matter how serious they are and how serious they are in arguing with Bai Shan can still see the hesitation and entanglement in their hearts. He didn't need them to reply immediately, he just smiled and didn't force it. He just turned around and let someone prepare a different gift for them. Bai Shan personally sent everyone to the door, and everyone gave a box. He smiled and said, "This is a local product that I brought from Chang'an. It's not a good thing. You can take it back and enjoy it." He smiled and said, "I really think about you all, and I really want to persuade the second prince to surrender. I also ask you to persuade the second prince when you see the second prince." Everyone didn't expect him to say such a thing in person, but he said it in front of the door guard, speechless for a while. Bai Shan did not stop. He said, "The ancestors have something to say, and those who know the current affairs are Junja. The general trend of the world is that after a long period of separation, it must be merged. The Liaodong area and the Central Plains have been separated for a long time. Why don't the second prince follow the trend of the times?" He smiled and said, "With the ability of the second prince, how can you know that he will not become the next General Ashina, and his name will go down in history?" Everyone was silent again, and they said goodbye after receiving the gift. They didn't go to see the second-year high school prince immediately, but first opened the box on the carriage, saw the pearl/gem/spice in it, just glanced away and fixed their eyes on the letter in the box. Take it out immediately and take it apart. Some people's expressions did not change. After all, it was still the words he said to persuade surrender, but the above made a more straightforward promise that as long as they surrendered, they would be granted official positions. If they could persuade the second prince to surrender, then the promised official positions will only get bigger. Yuan Yi and the others did not change their expressions, but pondered whether to go home directly or turn around to meet the second prince. However, the expressions of Mr. Meng and others who came along the way changed, because the letter was written with their names. Not only that, but the words of persuasion in each letter were different from what they promised. Young Master Meng was also surprised. "Father, we came here on a temporary basis, and he didn't leave halfway before. How could he write this letter of persuasion so quickly? Could it be that they still have a think tank in their envoys?" Mr. Meng rubbed the words with his fingers, raised his hand to smell it, and shook his head. "This is not just written, not even written today. I'm afraid he has already guessed that we will come." "That?" Master Meng lowered his eyes and thought, and said after a while, "We don't have enough food in our family. The batch of food and grass promised to the second prince will be delayed first." When asked, he said that it is still being raised, and there is really no more in the warehouse. Young Master Meng was startled and asked in a low voice, what if they use force? Our Meng family has been operating in Ungshi City for generations, and we are not vegetarian. When you go back, you will recruit all the shopkeepers to your home and protect the yard. For the second prince, you have to wait. I think, this letter I must not have received it alone. Master Meng sighed. This white envoy persuaded him to surrender without hesitation. This is a conspiracy. It can be seen that the Jin state is very confident, and the second prince should not agree with the generals to come to see him. Young Master Meng, if the generals don't come to see him, they can't follow him. However, Master Meng sighed, time is also fate. If we don't take this trip, we won't think about adapting to the times. Shui Gui stood one step behind Bai Shan and watched all the carriages with him out of sight. He asked curiously, aren't you afraid that they will go to see the second prince? Bai Shan smiled and said, I am an envoy who originally came to persuade surrender, and now I'm just doing my job. I also think they can persuade the second prince for me. Why are they afraid of them going to see the second prince? Bai Shan turned back to the yard under the watchful eyes of the guard at the door, and asked Shui Gui when he returned to the lobby, is the letter put in according to their identities? Yes. Shui Gui took out the remaining 5 letters, there is no one from these families. Bai Shan took it, beckoned, and when the guards brought the brazier, he opened the letters and burned them one by one. They are all important people, and obviously, there are a lot of people floating around here. Shui Gui, can you really buy and persuade them? Bai Shan, who knows? He said very singly, I have done my best. As for whether it is successful or not, the rest is up to God's will. Shui Gui, it feels so unreliable. Daji came in and asked, Master, are we leaving? When this matter spreads to the ears of the second prince, he will definitely be angry, and he is afraid that he will use rudeness on Bai Shan. Bai Shan thought for a while and then shook his head, no, if we leave now, the people who only received the letter will lose confidence in us. It's inappropriate, we'll wait a little longer, and we won't run if our lives are not endangered. Shui Gui felt that Bai Shan was quite courageous, as expected of someone who could go to war, and he still had courage. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2740. In the evening, Bai Shan sat at his desk and pondered. After a long while, he raised his head to look at the void and muttered, I don't know if Man Bao can know the news from my side. Launch a violent attack. He said, some people always know how to withdraw until they are in pain. Keek, who recorded the screen. It glanced at the host who wrote the pulse case, hesitated for a while, or ding dong, host, do you want to watch the recording? Man Bao said without raising his head, no, wait until I go to bed at night to see. After speaking, he looked up dumbly and thought, Keek never seemed to ask her to watch the recording on his own initiative. She was shocked, and she was very frightened. She quickly sank into the space, and while turning on the recording screen, she asked, is Bai Shan in danger? Keek, no. Man Bao breathed a sigh of relief, then slowed down and asked, should I look forward more? Coco paused for a while and suggested, let's move forward a quarter of an hour. So Man Bao moved forward for a quarter of an hour. She propped her chin on the desk, closed her eyes, and saw Bai Shan in her mind, as if looking at him across the void. Seeing him staring at the void in a daze, without moving for a long time, Man Bao couldn't help scratching his face, feeling that the time given by Keek was too inaccurate, and he had to watch for a long time in a daze. When she heard Bai Shan's self-talk, Man Bao pondered, what did he do? Why should Zhao Qiuagong attack violently? Keek suggested, look at the host 4 hours ahead. Man Bao was about to move forward when Keek suddenly said, something happened to Bai Shan. It directly gave real-time surveillance video, and saw that his yard was surrounded by people, and many archers came, aiming at their yard from all directions. Bai Shan, who was in a daze in the room, seemed to have heard the movement. He immediately got up and walked to the window to look out. He saw the bright lights outside, and many people rushed in with torches. Bai Shan turned his head and bowed to Void. "Father-in-law, I don't know if you are here, I just want to say, if you are here, please tell Manbao and let His Majesty launch a strong attack in the early hours of the morning, hit as many places as you can. If it's not there, that doesn't matter. There are still ways for the kid to save his life. I will definitely not let Manbao be a widow." Having said that, he turned around and tidied up his clothes before exercising the muscles on his face, then with a faint smile, he opened the door and went out. Shuigui, Daji, and the others had already run out of their respective rooms and were gathered in front of Bai Shan's house, looking ahead with alert expressions on their faces. Seeing Bai Shan come out, Shuigui stepped forward and said in a low voice, "Sir, if you break through, you will be able to take you out first. Don't worry, I will take care of you." Bai Shan reassured him, "Don't worry, don't be afraid, as long as they don't want to kill you, you all wait for what I want and don't act rashly." Shuigui complied. As he was talking, a general wearing armor came over, and when he saw Bai Shan, he did not salute, but squinted his eyes and said, "Envoy Bai, my prince is invited." He turned sideways, "Please." Bai Shan nodded slightly, raised his feet and went down the steps. When everyone wanted to follow, the general reached out to stop them and said rudely, "Our prince only invited by envoys." Shuigui unceremoniously grabbed his arm and pressed it down fiercely, his eyes fixed, "I am ordered to protect the envoy, and I will never leave. If you want to take the envoy alone, you will have to kill me." The general only felt that his arm was about to break, and his face changed slightly. He tried to raise his hand, but he kept being pressed down, so he looked at Shuigui fiercely, "Do you really think I dare not kill you all? Someone dash." The archers surrounding the outside were immediately revealed and aimed at Shuigui, pulling the bow. Shuigui continued to press him down and sneered, "You must be the one who held me before I die." "Participant, you." "General Shui." Bai Shan smiled and stretched out his hand to put his hand on the intersection of the two, holding down the back of Shuigui's hand, and said with a slight smile, "It's not a big deal, you stay here, the soldiers also need you to take it with you." "Grown-ups." Bai Shan Chong shook his head slightly. Shuigui didn't speak, but he didn't let go of the general's hand. Bai Shan didn't let go of their hands, but turned his head and said with a smile to the general, "General Shui will stay, I will only bring my relatives, but the people in the yard should be taken care of by the general, they can take care of them. They are all good sons of my great Jin, and it is not easy to explain to your majesty without any official." He said, "Tomorrow there will be labor ginseng to bring in some food for the soldiers." The general was silent, and Shuigui and Bai Shan knew that he had acquiesced. Bai Shan raised his hand, and Shuigui also let go of the other's arm. Bai Shan and Shuigui said, "Don't worry, I'll be back in 2 days at most, you stay in the courtyard, don't be impulsive." After saying that, he took Daji away, and the ginseng snorted coldly at Shuigui before turning around and following Bai Shan's footsteps. Heavy soldiers escorted Bai Shan all the way to the council chamber. There was only the second-year high school prince in the council chamber, and the lights in the lobby were brilliant, but apart from the servants who were serving, there was only the second-year high school prince sitting at the table. Bai Shan went in with his feet raised, glanced at the sumptuous wine and dishes on the table, and smiled slightly. "The second prince is quite interested. Aren't you afraid of insomnia at night when you drink at this time?" The second prince of the high school motioned Bai Shan to sit down, and said coldly, "I thought Lord Bai likes drinking, after all, he can exchange such fine silk and satin for fine wine, but after coming to me in Goguryeo for 3 days, he has already made many drinking friends. I specially invited Master Bai to use the wine." He picked up the jug and poured Bai Shan a glass of wine, and said, "Why don't you try my drink, Sir Bai?" Bai Shan sat down opposite him, took a sip from the wine glass and nodded, "Not bad, although I don't know much about wine, but this wine is clear and refreshing, and it's not uncomfortable to drink. This is the best wine in our Goguryeo, but it only got good reviews from Lord Bai. It's no wonder that everyone is in love with the wealth and luxury of the Central Plains. Whenever possible, they are vying to pursue the Central Plains." The second high school prince said, It's just like Tian Khan's obsession with expanding the territory." Bai Shan smiled and asked, "Second prince, is this the reason why you want to return to me and attack Yangzhou?" The second high prince raised his head and stared at him. "Nasa disagrees with me asking people to see you, saying that people are unpredictable and the interests are moving, but the envoys of Jin are good at words, and letting them contact you at this time will only be detrimental to me. But I believe in my generals and courtiers, and I don't believe they would betray me on the basis of a seat." Bai Shan said, "A good bird chooses a tree. Besides the monarch, there are parents, wives, and children. Why should the second prince embarrass them? What about you? Are you willing to turn your back on your country and join me in the royal court of the Gao family?" Bai Shan raised his eyebrows slightly and asked with a smile, "Is there anything in the royal court of the Gao family worthy of my service?" He ignored the drastic change in the face of the second Prince Gao and said, "Your Majesty is the Lord Ming, the second prince, although the Liaodong area is your Gao's vassal state, but your management is not very good. In terms of wealth, the whole country is not comparable to a prefecture in my hometown. Isn't it embarrassing for me to ask such a question?" Okay, said the second high prince with a grim smile, "Envoy Bai is really brave. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Come on, send the envoy Bai to the dungeon to sober up. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2741. Bai Shan thought about it for a while, and then drank all the wine in the glass. If he was beaten, drinking the wine should reduce the pain a little bit. He didn't even struggle. He stood up wisely before the Goguryeo soldiers came in, and even bowed to the second high school prince before walking out with them, without them holding him back. The second prince of high school was not happy at all, and became more and more angry. There are only a few dim lights in the dungeon at this time, and it is almost impossible to see the road under your feet. Bai Shan and De Ji went down to the deepest part, only to feel that it was gloomy and cold inside. Bai Shan walked and watched, but he was not very nervous. Anyway, he would definitely not die. The second high school prince would not kill the envoys of Jin, especially when he was at a disadvantage. So the person who took over saw him being so leisurely, so he couldn't help but look at him twice and ask the soldier who sent him down, "Who is this person and what did he do? He really knows how to entertain." The soldier said, "This is the envoy of Jin," and the prince asked him to be entertained. Bai Shan also smiled and nodded at the other party, and said kindly, "It's time to work. Prisoner, so this is a good reception. Is it a good reception, or is it really a good reception?" Bai Shan had already found a place for himself, so he pointed to an empty cell next to him and asked, "Do we live here?" The head of the cell couldn't help but be surprised. "You're not nervous, this is a dungeon." Bai Shan smiled and nodded, "I know, but I just said some truths and angered the second prince. It's okay to live in the dungeon for 2 days. The two countries are in contact, and the second prince will always let me out as an envoy." Hearing this, the head of the cell couldn't help but look at the soldier who was escorting him. Seeing that the other party didn't speak, he knew that Bai Shan was right, so he didn't dare to do anything. He simply turned sideways to open the cell, pushed open the door and said, "Go in." Bai Shan lifted his foot and went in, followed by Deji. The head of the cell closed the cell with a snap, turned to look at the soldier, nodded and smiled and said, "Don't worry, the little one will treat him well." Soldier, he vaguely knew that the second prince didn't want this result, but he also knew that Bai Shan could always go out in the end, and there would definitely be a group of people who would be unlucky to settle accounts in the Autumn Queen, and he might be one of those people. Now the head of the prison has misinterpreted the meaning of the second prince. He hesitated for a while but still did not correct it. Forget it, the people above were fighting. Anyway, he had already passed the words as they were. If there was a problem, either the head of the prison was stupid and failed to understand the second prince. The meaning, either the second prince did not express clearly, and the people below misunderstood. It has nothing to do with him. Bai Shan glanced at Daji with a smile. Daji stretched out his hand from the middle of the fence, grabbed the soldier's hand, and said with a cold face, "Thank you for your escort, sir, you have worked hard tonight." The soldier held the hard object in his hand, and the hesitation and entanglement in his heart disappeared, and he nodded randomly and led the person away. After going out, he glanced at the firelight, and the things in his hand were yellow and orange, as thick as a finger. His heart skipped a beat, he grabbed his buddies, and whispered, "We parted after we went out." The others hadn't seen military pay for a long time, and when they saw money, they nodded again and again as if they saw something. When Bai Shan saw that they were gone, he gestured at Daji to the prison guard who was standing beside him. Daji felt it on his body, and finally found a piece of gold, stuffed it behind the prison cell, and said, "Please bring us something, sir, this room." Seeing Jin Zi, the prison head's eyes were straight, and he nodded again and again, "Sir, wait, I'll have someone prepare it." He took the gold and couldn't help but take a bite. After confirming that it was real, he walked away with a smile on his face. After a while, he and his subordinates came over with things, including quilts, pillows, tubs and buckets for washing, and even a piece of pancreas. These are all excellent things in prison. The movement here woke up the people in the next cell, and everyone looked at them with wide eyes. The prison head narrowed his eyes with a smile, and made the bed for Bai Shan himself. He turned around and saw the prisoners who were all looking at him. He immediately scolded, "What are you looking at? Sleep, if you don't want to sleep, I will pull you out to get a hair dryer." Everyone immediately fell down, but their eyes couldn't help but look here. Bai Shan glanced over lightly, smiled at them, and nodded. After all, this is his second time in jail. He tidied up his clothes and sat on the bed. He let out a breath. It was so dangerous that he finally didn't need to be beaten. I don't know if he would be beaten tomorrow. I hope Man Bao can hear what he said, so that the second-year high school prince won't have time to pay attention to him tomorrow. Daji had already touched the entire cell and walked back. "Master, do you want to sleep?" Bai Shan said feeling that he should keep his spirits up at this time. By the way, he will review today's events and think about what he should say next time he sees someone to save his life. Daji helped him take out the hair crown. Bai Shan took off his clothes, and lay down under the quilt with only his underwear. The quilt is not a new quilt, and although it is not very old, it just has a bad smell. Since he was a child, Bai Shan used his own quilts when he went on expedition. Although the outer quilt was old, the inner quilt was new, soft, and odorless. Bai Shan was a little disgusted, so he frowned, and asked Daji to bring the clothes over, lay a layer of them against his body, and then lie down, but he didn't want the quilt to cover his neck, only his chest. Daji knew what was wrong with him, and seeing that he had given him a place, he took off his shoes, socks, and coat and lay down directly. Not only those prisoners, but also the head of the cell and the yaman in the cell were quietly observing Bai Shan. Seeing that he was so particular about sleeping, he couldn't help but be stunned. The prison head even touched the golden gold in his hands, feeling that his fortune had come. Daji also whispered to Bai Shan, "Master, we are too generous." Bai Shan closed his eyes and didn't care, said indifferently, "Money is something outside the body, as long as you can save your body and life, you don't need to worry about it. Besides, the things on his body, except for the clothes, belong to him, from jade crowns to jade ornaments. It was his, and he wasn't heartbroken at all. Daji, the main reason is that the incident happened suddenly, and I don't have much money with me." Bai Shan opened his eyes and asked in a low voice, "How much is left on your body?" Daji said depressedly, "The gold is all used up, there are still a few pearls in the sleeve pocket, and I don't know how long we will be here." Bai Shan exhaled and said to him, "It's good to have pearls, but no, I still have jade pendants and jade crowns here. Don't worry, we can go out in 2 days. These things are mainly used to maintain their decent life in prison." Man Bao exhaled and said to Keek, "Bai Shan is so pitiful." "Then get up." Keek asked her, "What are you doing?" "I'm going to find Zhao Qiuagong. Bai Shan has said that it is best to attack in the early morning, then the early morning. Tonight, the second prince of high school will definitely not be able to sleep, and many people will not be able to sleep. The front line is neglected. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2742. Zhou Man's tent is not very far from Zhao Qiuagong's, just the past few. But at this time, Zhao Qiuagong was already lying down and was about to fall asleep. When he was woken up, he thought there was an enemy attack. When he came out, only Zhou Man was seen, so he couldn't help but stare. "What's the matter with Lord Zhou's visit late at night?" Man Bao covered his heart and said, "Zhao Qiuagong, my heart hurts." "Zhao Qiuagong, I should ask Imperial Dr. Lu for this matter. No matter how difficult it is to find her students, he is not a doctor, so why are you looking for him?" Man Bao glanced at him contemptuously and said, "This is not a disease, haven't you heard of it? Someone close to him has an accident, and the other person has a faint premonition." "Zhao Qiuagong, what happened to your family? You are going out now. You can't leave if you have an accident. It's a big crime to escape." "Man Bao, I'm talking about Bai Shan." Zhao Qiuagong frowned, "Master Zhou has a lot of close people, how can you be sure that it is Master Bai?" "Man Bao, I just know, it's intuition." Zhao Qiuagong walked out of the tent. To avoid suspicion, he did not let her in. Instead, he stood outside the tent and talked with her. "He is now trapped in the enemy's army, and I can't help you save him." Zhao Qiuagong said, "Goguryeo is so weak, Lord Bai is my ambassador to Jin, they should not dare to kill him. At most, suffer a little bit, get a little injury and so on." Man Bao said, "It can be saved, and he has been in the past 4 days, and he has not made any progress. Why does Duke Zhao not attack and help him?" Zhao Qiuagong looked at her strangely, "Aren't you afraid that the other party will get angry and kill Bai Shan?" "Don't say that the other party can't kill the envoy, it is a reasonable development inferred from the reality when people still have reason, but what if people are irrational? So for the past 4 days, he has been grinding slowly, and the number of troops sent every day will not exceed 1,000, because he is afraid that the opponent will lose his mind if he hits too hard." After thinking about it, Man Bao decided to believe in Bai Shan. Since Bai Shan said that he could attack by force, he definitely could. So he said, "It doesn't matter, you can fight, Bai Shan should be fine." Zhao Qiuagong stared at her, and said after a while, "This is not something that can be decided immediately, Lord Zhou, let's go back and wait for the news first. It's best to attack before dawn. They have few defenses, and they are the most sleepy thing. Maybe we are lucky and can capture the entire city of Ungshi in one fell swoop." Zhao Qiuagong only twitched the corners of his mouth. "There are many soldiers and horses on the opposite side, and there are many lanes. How could it be possible to capture it in one fell swoop?" However, Zhao Qiagong thought about it for a while, and still sent scouts to inquire about the news, and at the same time went to find the generals of Ashi. Has the mission sent a message back? No, General Ashina said, we asked the soldiers at the bottom and the soldiers on the opposite side to inquire. It took a lot of money to inquire about some news, saying that Lord Bai was placed under house arrest as soon as he passed. Chi Bai Li said, can the mission work? If not, hurry up and attack. I think the weather is getting colder and colder, and it may snow at some time, and the situation will be even more unfavorable for us. Niubishi said, the envoys are still there, and it would be dangerous to attack them at this time. Zhao Qiagong asked, what if the safety of the mission is ignored? General Ji looked at each other, and General Ashina said quietly, Your Majesty will not agree. Zhao Qiagong waved his hand and said, this is also what Lord Zhou meant. Generals, I can't tell, Lord Zhou is the kind of person who sacrifices his relatives for the sake of righteousness. People are complicated for a while. Zhao Qiagong glanced at them and said, Master Zhou said that something has happened to Bai Shan now, let us attack him and help him. Ashina frowned, if Lord Bai is in an unfavorable situation there, we are afraid that we will anger the other party by aggressively attacking at this time, and it will be even more detrimental to him. Niu Shishi was refreshed, and said to them, if the other princes of Gao's family are still angry, they may kill Master Bai regardless of the consequences, but the second prince of Gao's is very unlikely. How to say? This second prince is a well-known and virtuous man in Goguryeo. He has both talents and looks, and because of this he can compete with the eldest prince for the throne. Niu Shishi said, these are all advantages, but he also has a disadvantage. Influenced by others, if Lord Bai has already persuaded him at this time, but he is hesitant, attacking at this time makes him feel hopeless to defend the city, and it is very likely that he will surrender. Since there is no hope of defending the city, and even the entire Goguryeo has no hope, he naturally has to plan for the future, and the troops and the city in his hands are political resources. Zhao Qiagong's eyes lit up, and he and Ashina looked at each other. Chi Bai Li immediately got up and took down the map and put it on the table, try it, anyway, even Lord Zhou suggested it. If the judgment is really wrong, it can only be that Bai Shan is unlucky, and the family members can't blame them. Zhao Qiagong looked at the street map of Shicheng and said after a while, this battle can only be won but not lost. If he loses, the second-year high school prince will regain his confidence, and Jishi will not only be a disaster for Bai Shan, but it will also be very unfavorable to their great Jin. Several people have been staring at this map for the past few days, and they have long thought about it, and soon designated a new combat plan. General Ashina got up and said, I'll let the kitchen prepare. Chi Bai Li said, I'm going to order troops. Niu Shishi also got up, I'll go check the armament. Zhao Qiagong, the 8 characters are only one stroke, and His Majesty has not agreed. All the generals saluted in unison. There is a general manager of the Labor University. Zhao Qiagong rolled the map and snorted, and went out of the tent to find the emperor. Others hurriedly prepared to go, they felt that the emperor would definitely agree. The emperor hadn't slept, he was looking at the brochures and letters sent from the capital. Of course, most of the documents are handled by the prince, and those that can be delivered to him are very important but not urgent. Moreover, the prince will also write letters to the emperor every now and then to report the situation in the capital and all over the country. So the emperor was often busy until late at night. Hearing Zhao Qiagong's request to see him, he let him in, and the emperor continued to look at the channel in his hand without raising his head. No need to ask, the envoy has never returned with news, and it is not allowed to attack. Zhao Qiagong, Your Majesty, this time Lord Zhou personally asked for it. When the emperor heard this, he put down the letter in his hand, Zhou Monkaiu. She didn't know that if she angered the other party, would there be a direct attack on the other side. People lose their minds, but they can do anything. Even if they regret later, that thing has already happened, and the dead person has died. Zhao Qiuagong then told the story of Niu Bishishi, and informed the emperor of the results of their discussions, saying, "Your Majesty, Niu Shishi knows more about the royal family of the Gao family, and Lord Zhou also cares more about Lord Bai than us. Since they are two, everyone agrees with a strong attack, so why not give it a try?" The emperor frowned, pondered for a while, and said, "Although Liaodong is important, Bai Shan is more important than Liaodong." He said, "There is also a fierce general Shuigui in the envoys, and I have a good minister and a beautiful general. Why is the world uneasy, and the territory is not wide?" He shook his head and said, "I can't trade the lives of the two of them for Liaodong." Zhao Qiuagong said, "Your Majesty, if this is Bai Shan's plan, it means that he is very sure. If he hesitates, he will miss the opportunity." The emperor said, "Then get the news of Bai Shan first, or you won't be able to take risks. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2743. Zhao Qiuagong could only go out to find the scouts, gave them a lot of gold, and ordered, "Go and find out about Lord Bai, the sooner the better." Yes. At the same time, there are many people on the other side of Ungshi city who have trouble sleeping. The second high school prince couldn't sleep, so people came to him one after another this afternoon. Some came to complain to him that Bai Shan had bought them privately, and showed him the contents and letters in the box. There were also those who came with boxes and letters to persuade him to surrender, and there were even more private letters that said nothing. He didn't believe that if he went to the banquet together, Bai Shan would let the others go. That's why the second high school prince was so angry. He felt that he had made a mistake, and he should have listened to Nasa on this matter. He was angry, but he couldn't help the hesitation in his heart. Is it really going to drop? Is there no other way for Wang Ting and Eng Shicheng to go? It's a shame that Yanshao has lost all the soldiers borrowed from Mohe, and now they can't even try to borrow soldiers from Mohe. The sophomore prince couldn't sleep. The father and son of the Meng family also had trouble sleeping. They received the news when Bai Shan Ke was arrested. Now only half of Ungshi city is left, not to mention that the guest house where Bai Shan lives is not very far from their home. Seeing his father walking around all the time, young Master Meng couldn't help but say, "Father, you didn't go to the second prince. Even if he was angry, he wouldn't blame us." Master Meng said, "I heard that others removed the box and brought the letter. They kept the letter, but did not take it out when they went to see the second high school prince, nor did they tell the second high school prince about persuading the second prince to surrender the letter. In fact, what was written on it was so heartwarming that he was so excited that he was afraid that he would show it to the second prince of the high school, and the other party would suspect that he was biased towards the Jin army." Mr. Meng turned around in place, and finally gritted his teeth and turned around and said, "Go, quietly let someone go to the dungeon of the Senate." Young Master Meng's expression changed, and he couldn't help but say, "Father, this is too risky." But Master Meng shook his head and whispered, "If you want great interests, you must have great adventures, which is inevitable." When young Master Meng heard this, he thought for a moment and then said, "My son will go in person." Master Meng thought about it and nodded, "Okay, be careful." Mr. Meng went to change his clothes and went out quietly with someone. The council chamber is a quite large building complex, and it is another courtyard in Lusa. After the second high school prince came, the place centered on the other courtyard was encircled and requisitioned. The generals and officials brought by the second high school prince lived there, and the dungeons were all ordinary prisoners, all prisoners and generals, as well as some wealthy businessmen and people from big families. The second high school prince was not calm when he took over the city of Ungshi, not to mention that after he settled in, he still collected food and grass inside and outside the city of Ungshi. The people who were locked in the dungeon were those who violated the law and resisted donations. The Meng family has a great business, and naturally there are relatives inside, so he can go in under the pretext of visiting relatives. Of course, under normal circumstances it would not be night, but with the Meng family's operation in AncientChina, it was not difficult to buy off the officials and the head of the prison to get in and out of the cell. At this time, young Master Meng quietly entered the cell wearing a cloak and stood in front of Bai Shan's cell. Bai Shan was already asleep, but he was not very stable. He woke up as soon as people came outside, let alone auspiciousness. He opened his eyes and got up, saw a dark man standing outside the cell, and glanced again. The prison head and servants behind him turned around and pushed Bai Shan up. The head of the cell opened the cell and whispered sideways, "You better hurry up, you only have a quarter of an hour at most." Mr. Meng responded and put a money bag in the prisoner's hand before entering. Bai Shan was sitting in front of the bed with only his jacket on. He probably felt a little cold. He put on his jacket and looked up at the shadow in the cloak, squinting, "Meng son." Young Master Meng took off the cloak and smiled at him. Master Bai has good eyesight, and he recognized it with just one side. Bai Shan smiled slightly, patted the bed, and said, "The house is shabby, and there are many neglects, please forgive me, sir, and just sit down." Seeing him so calm, young Master Meng couldn't help sighing in his heart. No wonder his father had so much confidence in Dajin. It was true that this envoy was not an ordinary person. He was already in prison, but he did not change his face. What was the day, and what is it now? After giving a bow, young Master Meng thanked him. He didn't sit down, but lowered his voice and talked about the situation outside, and hinted, "My father deplores the envoy, but the second prince will not listen to the persuasion for the time being. You know, Meng Shi is no better now than before, so it's not better to force this matter too much, so we can only intercede with the envoy after a period of time after the second prince's anger subsides." Bai Shan smiled and listened while watching him ponder. Can he trust him? Is this the temptation of the second high school prince, or is it a temptation by Montessori to take him to surrender to the second high prince, or is he surrendering to Jin as he has shown? Bai Shan weighed back and forth in his heart. I don't know if Man Bao heard what he said. If he didn't, this would be an excellent opportunity to pass on the news, but if he heard it, the other party was someone else, and it would be a blow to the Jin army. Bai Shan lowered his eyes and pondered, and when young Master Meng finally finished his politeness and implied his loyalty, he also made up his mind. He got up and saluted young Master Meng, then stepped forward and whispered to him, "Master Meng and young Master Meng are righteous, and I will report to your majesty when I return to the Jin army." Young Master Meng was a little excited and lowered his voice, "If the envoy is not at ease, the Meng family can smuggle the envoy out. The city is divided into two parts, and the two sides are not far apart, so as long as they operate properly, they can rescue Bai Shan and send them there. Of course, they can also send them there by the way." Young Master Meng was a little excited and felt that this method was good. In this way, they brought the envoy to the past, which was a great achievement. But Bai Shan didn't want him to save him, so he asked the other party to deliver the letter. "Send a letter." Bai Shan nodded. Young Master Meng hesitated, "But I didn't bring a pen and paper here." Bai Shan said, "Young Master can send a message for you." Meng Gongzi only hesitated and agreed. When Mr. Meng left, most of the prisoners in the prison were awake. The prisoner who was closer to his cell couldn't bear it anymore. He called to him and asked, "Are you from Jin?" Bai Shan turned to look at him, smiled and nodded, "Yes." He approached the door of the cell a little, stared at him in the dark, and asked, "You are the envoy of the Jin state, are you here to ask for peace? How is the war outside?" Bai Shan just smiled and didn't answer. He sat on the bed and thought for a while, making sure that what he said just now was not missing, and then lay down again to sleep. The prisoner couldn't get the answer he wanted, so he couldn't help knocking on the door of the cell. making a clanging sound. When the head of the cell who sent young Master Meng came back and saw him making a noise, he knocked on the door of the cell and shouted, "Sleep honestly, and hang you outside if you are dishonest. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2744. The prisoner shrank his neck, gave Bai Shan a disappointed look, and had to turn around and lie down. Bai Shan also withdrew his gaze and lay still. The Meng family waited for a long time, and finally decided to be more adventurous, and Mr. Meng went to pass the message in person. The greater the danger, the greater the benefits after the success, so young Master Meng followed the guards at home to shuttle through the city, quietly touched the front line, and was discovered by the scouts of the Jin army. Meng Gongzi was brought before Zhao Qiuagong. Zhao Qiuagong was about to fall asleep, and when he saw him, he was refreshed. Bai Shan asked you to deliver the letter. Yes, Meng Gongzi was actually a little hesitant. He heard that the princess of Zhao state was fighting over there. He didn't really want to make peace, nor did he advocate surrender, and he had a bad relationship with the White Envoy. When Bai Shan Ke was dispatched, he sent troops to fight for East 3rd Street. Obviously, he didn't care much about the life and death of the envoy. Zhao Qiuagong's gaze was threatening, and Meng Gongzi lowered his head and dared not look at him, and said honestly, "The White Envoy was imprisoned by the second prince in the dungeon, and he asked me to pass a message to the Qiuagong." You say. Envoy Bai said that you don't need to pay too much attention to him, you can follow the original plan and launch a strong attack tomorrow. Zhao Qiuagong raised his eyebrows. They had Mao's original plan. He glanced at young Master Meng and pondered. It seemed that Bai Shan didn't trust him very much either. But he sent word that the storm should not be false. It was this time. Chen Zheng, in the middle of the day, not long after eating breakfast, it is the most energetic time of the day. Who is attacking at that time? Since it is going to be a strong attack, it is natural to consider the most beneficial time first. Zhao Qiuagong rubbed his chin and asked, "What else does the White Envoy have to say?" Young Master Meng shook his head, "No more." Zhao Qiuagong smiled slightly and said to him, "Then ask the son to stay here first, and then send the son to reunite with his family in 2 days." Young Master Meng's face paled, knowing that they didn't believe him very much and wanted to detain him to see the situation. Before he came, his father had already assumed the situation with him, and he was mentally prepared, so his face was only a little pale, and it was not a gaffe. He responded with a salutation, followed the others and left. Zhao Qiuagong immediately called the generals to see the emperor. After pondering, the emperor said, "It seems that Bai Shan is very sure to protect himself. If that's the case, let's attack it." "What's the time?" Zhao Qiuagong said, "My minister sees that Yin Zheng is not bad." He said, "It's right in the middle of Zishi and Chen Shi, and Lord Zhou also proposed in the early morning." At this moment, he remembered Zhou Man's absurdity, and said, "Master Zhou and Master Bai have a heart-to-heart connection. This may be what Master Bai thinks in his heart. The time that Montessori said should be used to cover up." The emperor nodded, and he thought so too, so he said, "Okay, then Yin Zheng will launch an attack and let the kitchen start cooking." "Yes." The emperor left Zhao Qiuagong behind and said to him, "When the day dawns, the troops will be withdrawn, and Chen Bing and the border will deter them." He said with a sullen face, "I don't want the soldiers to be injured too much." Since Bai Shan can spread the news when he is in prison, it is obvious that he is doing a good job there, and the matter of persuading him to surrender should be progressing. Yes. Duke Zhao ordered to retreat and hurry up to sleep. Man Bao, who was lying on the bed and spent a lot of points stalking him, turned over and lay down comfortably. Well, he finally left according to Bai Shan's plan. I don't know if the second prince will be frightened tomorrow. As for surrender, he killed Bai Shan in anger. Alas, sorrow. Man Bao was lying on the bed, holding the quilt and Keek sighed, let's sleep too, we will get up around Yinshi. And now it's almost time, it's late at night, very late, and she can still sleep for an hour and a half. Man Bao rolled with the quilt, covered the quilt, yawned, and said confusedly, Yinshi woke me up at 2 o'clock. After saying that, he fell asleep with his head tilted. Coco. The host's sleep is really as good as ever. Man Bao felt that he had just closed his eyes. He was drowsily floating in the water, and then Keek started beeping and said to her, it's 2/4 of Yinshi. Man Bao opened his eyes diligently, turned over, and said, how could it be so fast? Ming Ming only closed his eyes, maybe not for a quarter of an hour. Having said that, she still tried to get up, and then put on her clothes and went around the screen to go out. The cake that was sleeping outside woke up, and immediately got up, sir. Man Bao couldn't open his eyes a little, and said to her, put some water on and I'll wash my face. Zibing went to pick up the big pot, frowned and said, it's cold. She said, the slave goes to the kitchen to see if there is any hot water. No, I need cold water. Man Bao stopped her and sat down on the chair and said, just to wake up. The cake can only pour water for her. Man Bao washed his face, then let Zibing twiddle his hair, go back to sleep, I'll call someone. Zibing immediately said, sir, slaves will follow you. Man Bao shook his head, wait for me to get off the battlefield. I still need you to run errands. You go to bed first and take your turn. Man Bao thought for a while, then turned around to wake up the 2 students in the tents, and called Imperial Dr. Lu on the way. Everyone looked sleepy, they didn't know about the raid, and they were a little stunned at the moment. What's the matter? The war is about to start, go to the pharmacy to prepare the medicinal materials, and the medical bill will be moved to the front in a while. She and Imperial Physician Lu said, I and you will lead a team and set up medical bills separately on both sides. Imperial Physician Lu was stunned, who said there was a war, why didn't I know? The words just fell. Zhao Qiagong's personal soldiers came over, and when they saw them, their eyes lit up, Master Zhou, you are here. I just went to the big tent to find you. Your maid said that you woke up early in the morning and prepared. He said with a smile, although you know it, you still need to pass on your humble position again. The chief administrator asked you to prepare for the medical bills. Yinzhen's army will attack the south and east of the city together, and both sides need to set up medical bills, you see. Man Bao looked at Imperial Physician Lu, east of the city or south of the city, you can choose one. Imperial Physician Lu, east. Man Bao nodded, pointed at the students she had chosen, and said, you can choose half. Imperial Physician Lu said simply, it's half and half, you are half a female student, and I am half, you are half a male student, and I am half. When Man Bao heard this, he simply ordered a few people, and then said, let's go, prepare the herbs first. It will take a while for them to fight, and it will take a while for them to get out of injury, so they have time to do some basic preparations. Someone brought them food, and the kitchen had been quietly busy for a long time. At this time, the whole army was quietly eating. In the drowsy night, this is the time when people sleep the most soundly in the day. The Jin army quietly walks through the city. Some alert people hear the noise and quietly open the window to look at the soldiers. The window closed with a snap. The Jin army didn't care about them either. They walked past their walls and arrived at the current border line in a short while. In the darkness, they crouched in the shadows under the wall, watching the sleepy Goguryeo defenders on the opposite side. Everyone was waiting for an order. Suddenly, in the darkness of the night, a loud arrow shot into the sky. Everyone saw it, even the Goguryeo soldiers who were patrolling. They only had time to look up, and then their necks were wiped. Some people turned their heads and were shot by arrows with just one glance, and the defense line was instantly defeated. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2745. The Jin army went down 2 streets with lightning speed, but the Goguryeo soldiers were not incapable of anything. Therefore, the Jin army's offensive was quickly contained, but the shouts of killing were still soaring into the sky, and the entire city was once again caught in the flames of war, just like the siege some time ago. People in the whole city woke up, and the people honestly closed their doors and waited. In fact, they only wanted a result at this time, whether it was winning or losing, there must be a result. As the Jin army said in the streets and alleys in the past few days, the Liaodong area is originally one with the Central Plains. In addition, in the past few days, the emperor has been asking the Jin army to spread the bad words of the Gao family, saying that the royal court of the Gao family is cruel and unkind and extortionate and miscellaneous taxes. Many people do not say it with their mouths, but they agree with it in their hearts. Therefore, they did not dislike Liaodong's return to Dajin at this time. Anyway, as long as there was a result, they didn't want to stay at home anymore. Although it's winter now, they haven't had time to store enough firewood. What will they do this winter? They have to go out. The second prince of the high school was awakened, and when he arrived at the council, Nisa and all the generals and officials had already arrived. Except for Nisa, everyone was a little stunned. Why did Jin suddenly attack in a big way? Did they know about our detention of the envoy? When everyone was talking, they couldn't help but peek at the second-year high school prince. The sophomore prince pursed his lips and asked, "How is the front line?" UNU reported, 3 streets have been lost in the east of the city, and 2 have been lost in the south of the city. Now they are deadlocked. The voice just fell, and the leader ran in and said, "Prince, a large number of Jin troops have been found on Hangar Street, and several highlands have been captured by Jin troops." The second high school prince's expression changed, and he said almost at the same time as Nisa, "They are going to cut off our connection to the east of the city." Nisa immediately said, "Prince, we must not let them occupy Hangar Street, otherwise we will lose control of Dongcheng. If they lose control of the east city, what's the point of them only occupying half of the south of the city?" At that time, he could only abandon Ungshicheng and escape. The second prince of the high school immediately dispatched troops to support Hangar Street, and then became suspicious. Why did the Jin army suddenly attack? How many hours did he put Bai Shan in the dungeon? Thinking of this, he was shocked, and immediately ordered his guards, "Go to the dungeon to see Bai Shan." The personal guard led the way, and came back 2 quarters later to report, "Bai Shan is still in the dungeon and has not escaped. The rest of the envoys are also in the guest house, and no one is missing." The second high school prince has already arranged all the people who can be arranged to the front line. He sat quietly, puzzled. Why did the Jin army suddenly attack? Is it impatient to wait for his reply, feeling that the time has dragged on for too long? The sophomore prince rubbed his forehead and asked, "What do you think of Nisa?" Nisa said calmly, "Prince, now our troops are evenly matched. Please come to the front line to boost morale. As long as you hold on to this time and delay it for another 10 days, this trouble can be solved." The second high school prince hurriedly asked, "Why?" Nisa said, "The weather is getting colder. If the old minister is not wrong, in 10 days, at most 12 days, the first snow will fall, and it will be a heavy snow." He said, "The Jin army is attacking from a distance, and the supplies are far inferior to ours, and the food and grass are not available, so as long as we hold on, they will retreat if they can't attack for a long time." The second high school prince hesitated, and Nisa knelt on the ground, bowed his head and said, "The old minister is willing to serve the prince and go to the front line to fight in person, and the prince is invited to come in person." The sophomore prince stood up and said with a firm look, Okay. At the same time, the emperor on the other side had already appeared on the front line wearing armor. As soon as he arrived, he saw Joe Man carrying the medical account people shuttle in the back, arranging the soldiers who were sent down from the front under the eaves, while treating the wounds. On the other hand, he had to avoid the flowing arrows that occasionally flew over. The emperor frowned slightly, looked at the houses on the front and back, left and right, and said to Yin Li, "Bring some money and requisition all the houses nearby, I want to use it to house the wounded soldiers." Yin Li responded with a yes and was about to make arrangements when Bai Erlang immediately ran up on his horse. Your Majesty, let me do this, I am the one who manages the medical bills." The emperor only saw him now, looked him up and down, and saw that he was wearing a cloak, still wearing a conspicuous red robe, and immediately became angry. "This is a war, why are you wearing such conspicuous things when you don't have to? Where's your armor? You're not afraid of that? Did the arrow stick to you?" "Bai Erlang, your Majesty, this is the official robe of the minister. When traveling with the emperor, what would he wear without an official robe? And his cloak is black, okay, it covers it at once, as for the armor, I don't have armor." The emperor turned his head and said to Guzhong, "Choose a set of armor that I don't often use, and send it back to the concubine." Then he said to Bai Erlang, "Why don't you go quickly, what are you doing?" When Bai Erlang heard this, he was very happy. He immediately took people back to get some money, and then knocked on the door. There were no people in many houses, because many of the streets were paved in the front and courtyards in the back, and many people did not live in them. Here. So Bai Erlang directly had the door smashed, and when he went in, he directly requisitioned it. If he ran into someone's house, he would give money to requisition the front of the shop, so that they would close the door in the backyard, and they would not go to the backyard. He doesn't care whether people agree or not. That's how war is, and it's up to people to weigh and choose slowly. Bai Erlang requisitioned the house, turned around and took people to carry all the wounded soldiers outside into the house, and also asked people to build a brazier and prepare quilts and other items for keeping out the cold. The wounded soldier, who was almost freezing outside, felt better. He was injured, took medicine, was roasted by the fire, and after taking the medicine again, he fell asleep. Bai Erlang ran into another shop, and saw that Man Bao was letting someone remove the door panel, and he was holding down a soldier who was screaming, and was holding a saw on his forehead to cut off the opponent's arm. Most of his hand was chopped off by the knife, and he couldn't save it. In order to stop the bleeding, he could only saw off this forearm. Bai Erlang immediately rushed up to hold down the person and asked, "Isn't there a numbness?" Man Bao said, "I gave it to him, but he still screamed. Ma Fei San doesn't seem to have much effect on him, and I don't dare to take heavy medicine. I have already used needles to relieve the pain, but it will definitely still be very painful. Hold on, I'll move faster." Several soldiers came to help and pressed him down. Man Bao and Subangzia quickly sawed together. After a long while of sawing off his hands, Man Bao began to give him medicine to stop the bleeding. Seeing that his face was pale in pain, he asked Subangzia, "Is the painkiller still ready?" Subangzia shook her head, "There is little water here, so it needs to be brought from far away, so it's a bit slow." Bai Erlang thought for a while and said, "I'll go and ask you a few more people to help you." Man Bao nodded, and when the wound was dealt with, he would go on to deal with the next one. See you at 6 p.m.